Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
All right, Rob Browne here with you on this Wednesday morning. Man, already the week flying by. Another great weekend of college football upon us. And we're going to talk to the people that cover all these teams. We've got a great SEC roundup today. Like I say, we cover the SEC and your favorite team. Dudley, Dawson, Hogville.net is on with us in the first segment. Vince Ferrara, the sports animal up in Knoxville, part of the Vols network, will weigh in and talk about Tennessee. They get ready to play Kentucky. Jordan Hill checks in from the classic city, Athens, Georgia, talking about Georgia and Florida going head-to-head in the world's largest outdoor cocktail party this coming Saturday down in Jacksonville. They're talking, some people would like to move that game out of Jacksonville. You can't recruit there. Come on, people. You know recruits go to that game. They've gotten this far playing the game in Jacksonville. I hope they keep doing it. And in the fourth segment, Doug Dean checks in. AU Dose down in Birmingham. A lot he's got to talk about tonight. Was just reminded, want to say hello to one of our viewers, Chris Campbell. I went to high school with him, listening out in Dallas in the Metroplex, whatever, because there's so many places there together. Dallas, Fort Worth, Arlington, Mansfield, Irving. It's ginormous. Chris, I hope you are having a great day. Also, was reminded by David Aquadro, one of our Club 250 members, a daily listener on the Stairmaster to Sidelines. Bill Buckner's error happened on this day in 1986, forcing a Game 7 with the Mets. I hope people aren't texting Bill Buckner and reminding him of that. That was a big deal. But hey, we do this 25 times a month, at least 300 plus shows a year. And, we're not going to be, we don't just do it part-time. We bring the best guests on every day. You know how to follow us on all the social media and every other place out there. Follow us on Twitter at @sidelines_live. The YouTube channel, youtube.com/@sidelines_live. Tell your friends, your neighbors, even your coworkers about us. And Dudley, I'm watching the color TV this morning through the neighbors. They had the blinds pulled up, damn cable. We cut the cord over here at the farm. But that hurricane in the Pacific went from a tropical storm yesterday afternoon, 70 miles an hour, and it made landfall in Acapulco, Mexico, on the Pacific coast at over 165. I believe it was a Cat 5 at landfall. That's a surprise. I mean, that just doesn't happen. That was really, really strange. Maybe the radar was off, but what a mess that is. So I'm watching that, and I'm thinking, this is our escape for 2 hours. You get the Celtics on right there. I see that. Here you go. That's loyalty. See, I love people that they stick with their teams no matter what.
60 plus years, all the Celtics, Cowboys, and Cardinals, same ones since came out of the womb.
Yeah, and the bottom line is you got to. And it's, you cover Arkansas, and
nothing's happened this week. I don't know what we'll talk about. I mean, nothing happened around here.
I know, and it just, and Audrey, we have we're in Memphis. We have so many friends are Arkansas fans, but we're objective like you are. You got to be fair. Tell it like it is. Nobody was surprised, I guess, Sunday when Dan Enos was fired. But I can't believe it got this bad, because I've always thought he was a good coach and had done well in his previous stops. What happened this year? Was it a combination of a lot of things, but nobody knows more than you?
Well, the easy pinpoint thing would be to point at the offensive line and point at the players, but I just think it was a little bit more than that. Coach Pittman on Monday during his press conference talking about how the players didn't want to play for Coach Enos, how they weren't, didn't want to run through a wall like they do for the new defensive coaches, and what's going on over there. We don't get to see the locker room surroundings and all that, and you only get the first 20 minutes of practice, so it's hard to see any
Correct.
chasm that there is on the team. But he certainly mentioned that, and the other thing I think that factors into this a little bit is after the Texas A&M loss. Speaking of neutral site games, he started emailing fans right after the game. I mean, even before they left the stadium, and that wasn't a good look. So I think it was more about obviously the ineptitude of the offense, and there's just no way around that. They were decreases in rushing, passing, total offense, touchdowns, points, and there were increases in penalties, negative yardage plays, not enough explosive plays. And I think that when you put it all together, I'm sure it was a tough Saturday night, although I don't think this is the first time after Saturday's game where they only scored 3 points that Coach Pittman had thought about this. But I'm sure it was a tough Saturday night because this was a friend of his that had done well during his time when Brandon Allen was the quarterback here during 2015 and 2017. But it just wasn't working. And the interesting thing to me, I saw that Coach Enos had blocked a few media members. And so I went to see if I was blocked, and I was like, what did I do? I haven't really, got on him too much, but I just think it was, for whatever reason, not a good fit this time.
Yeah.
The frustration was getting to him, and it was time.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you're already seeing Colin in Memphis. Who will the Hogs hire? I mean, that's the $1 million question. You're not going to get anybody during the season, but the bigger question, I can't imagine Sam Pittman not being back next year. He's built so many things the right way, but this offensive coordinator deal didn't work out. But like I told you about Travis Williams and Marcus Woodson, I thought they would be great additions. What I hate, though, is KJ Jefferson. He came back and really believed that this could be a special year. Look, that life isn't fair, and it doesn't always work out like that. We know that. But what is it that Arkansas can do for these remaining games that they hadn't been doing in the previous games? Talk about who's taken over as offensive coordinator, or is it a collective effort?
Well, Kenny Guyton is the new interim offensive coordinator. He was the wide receivers coach. He's the former quarterback at Ohio State. He played under Urban Meyer. He coached under Tom Herman. So they said it is you're just throwing a guy in there that's never done anything, even though he's never called plays. I'm saying that he's helped build a game plan and all that. They went to work on that Sunday and Monday. Yesterday was the first practice that got to go, but we didn't get to see the first 20 minutes. So not sure how that's working. I will say that I think that the most interesting things this weekend have come from KJ Jefferson, who did a NIL thing yesterday and was on a radio show, and he talked about how that they were going to play with more up tempo. I mean, it's amazing the clock management this year has been so poor, and it may have in a 7-3 ball game, it may have cost them the game the other day when they didn't get the field goal, Cam Little's field goal. They get a delay of game. There have been so many situations, and they have to go on the top guy. They have to go on Coach Pittman, but I have to believe the acrimony on offense during all that was factoring into that as well. But they're going to play with more tempo. One of the more cognizant things that Coach Pittman said the other day was we brought in Coach Enos and wanted to help get KJ ready for here this season and for the next level. Well, that appears what they were doing. They were putting him in a situation where you're going to be a drop back passer, which is not his forte. I mean, he's really good on deep balls, but for some reason he's not as good on the intermediate and short passes. And I think they tried to fit a square peg in a round hole. Yeah, and that was a disservice, coaching malpractice, as you say. And there is, without any doubt, it was a mistake. But it didn't look like a mistake going in. Although there are 90% of the people said, "I told you." No, you didn't back then.
Oh, I clearly was a fan because I've watched Dan Enos at other places. Sometimes it just doesn't work.
Here's one of the things. I don't say this that often, although I don't have any problems. But I was wrong. I was definitely wrong. I came on this show and others and talked about how I thought this was going to work really, really well. It's going to, him and KJ are going to, be a great group together. The offense was going to continue. Well, that didn't happen. And it's easy to say you're wrong. And I'm going to do that.
Yeah, me too. And that's what I respect about you. I like what you said. I mean, you're from Arkansas. You cover the team, and you got to be objective, and you're a great professional. I looked, and I thought he would too. So I missed that one. Hey, I pick stocks and investments for clients. Sometimes I don't work out. We go over everything. We do the due diligence, on the front end. It's the same thing you do with a coach. So there's the idiot test. You know what I'm talking about. Mildred and I went over Sunday to the Cracker Barrel in West Memphis. We've been doing this fasting. So we ate breakfast at dinner. They've changed the name, by the way, of the Sunrise Sampler to Grandma's Sampler. And then what'd you get, Audrey? She got some other combo, but it's incredible food. So that little triangle thing with the little pegs you do, and she threw it to me, and I did it, and I knocked it out, and I there was the only one left, and she goes, "How did you do that?" And I said, "Well, I didn't think too much." And then she did it, and she's very smart. She kept leaving 3 or 4, and I said, the key to winning on that thing. And I sent it to my kids, and they said, "I'm not surprised." And I said, "Well, I could do something like that, but I got Dan Enos wrong." I mean, it's just what happens. But the key with that thing is just don't leave anything out there on its own, on an island. So where I'm going with this is there's just certain litmus tests that you want to give to people, before you hire them. I mean, if I was going to look to hire employees, I would want them to run 5 miles. To see how tough they are. Say, I'm going to give you 6 weeks if they're coming right out of college. I'm talking about. I'm not talking about somebody but you got to do everything you can. And I think, and this is another good point by Shoney, paralysis by analysis. It sounds like Arkansas and Auburn offenses this year. It looks simple on the surface, but I think KJ Jefferson just said it. He told what happened. I like that.
Yeah, and I came over here and I joked about that for 2 weeks. I've been joking about this being a pillow fight last Saturday's game. And boy, that's what it turned into. 7-3 in college. It was. You have to give the defenses credit, but they weren't necessarily going against the highest producing offenses ever. I mean, it is the numbers. And I even had to pull out precipitous drop in the numbers because you look at them and it's just unreal. The defense has cut off 150 yards total offense they were giving up last year, has cut down points, everything. I mean, that's been a great turnaround. But the offense, basically half of what you were rushing for, the third less than what you're passing for overall. And I mean, the mistakes and the discipline, I think spoke a lot. You can say it spoke to the team, but it definitely spoke to the offense. I mean, that was just a cluster this year.
Yeah.
And, we'll see if some new energy, some more up tempo, some getting the plays in quicker. I mean, you can't decide on the play with 8 seconds left on the 40-second clock. That's when you should be backing up and getting ready to, take the snap. And that has been all too consistent this year. And, if nobody wants to sit here and criticize everything, but there's not very much besides the special teams on offense. The punting has been really good lately, and Cam Little has been said is a badass. That's one of the worst things about that play on Saturday where they had to get the delay of game. He would have nailed that field goal. It would have been 7-6, and Arkansas at the end of the ball game would have had to only get to a field goal instead of going 75 yards. And they would have won a game they shouldn't have, but we still would have won it. And Enos may have still been the offensive coordinator. I don't know. We'll see. But it was awful, man. I have been to so many Arkansas games over the years. The offense was just pathetic, and it is unbelievable that you could take last year's offense. And Kendall Browse is suddenly a much better offensive coordinator, by the way, for everybody around here. Kenny Gatton's going to get the chance to do something with this offense, but you've got to believe, and Coach Pittman noted that as soon as he made the decision, he started getting calls from everybody else. So I don't have time to worry about that right now. But, that there's going to be somebody here next year that's going to be an offensive coordinator that I'm sure is going to be really good. They're going to take into a lot of different aspects than they did with Coach Enos. Technically KJ has one more year. I don't see him coming back, but it's going to be an interesting offseason. And you talked about how you think Coach Pittman will get another year. He probably will.
Yeah.
I mean, the people who have more money than you and I make those decisions. And from what I understand over the course of the last few weeks, nobody's been stepping up saying this is what I want, other than they wanted Enos to go on and for, just to be honest about it, a lot of people want the offensive line coach to go. Cody Kennedy, who came here as a tight ends coach, who had worked with Coach Pittman in Georgia, and that may be another friend situation. Again, I talk all the time about how I like these guys. It doesn't matter whether I like them or not. It's about performance. And if they only beat Florida International, don't win a game against a Division I team all year, then there are already being hard questions asked. I think they'll have to be even more asked then. Hopefully for their sake they'll get it turned around. And Coach Pittman made one. I thought it was a good character thing. Some people have gotten mad at it. He said that he's not worried about his buyout. He's not worried about his job. He's worried about the people inside the football building who don't have buyouts, who will have to go find another job. And somehow that was viewed as both a plus, and other people said, well, he's got his buyout. He just doesn't care. Well, I can tell you the man cares. I can see the man hurting.
You can.
Still, you hurt. It's your job to win.
Yeah. You go to any program in the SEC or in America, there are a lot of people who depend on that head football coach around him. There's people that are directly there and then indirectly. So there's collateral damage if you get rid of the coach. A coach is in charge of everything. If you're getting paid $6, $7, $8 million a year, you're going to take all the blame. That comes with that big salary. You look at Sam Pittman, so much goodwill has been built up. And you hate, I call it, when you start having to fire coordinators, it's like a stay of execution is what it is, because they're coming for you. Churchill famously said, those who believe in the policies of appeasement are like the ones who feed the crocodiles and hope that they will eat you last. To be very careful with that. And I just look at who wouldn't want to come to Arkansas and be part of that. You have world-class facilities. You're good in everything. Right now you're struggling with football, but there's so much opportunity. You got Oklahoma and Texas coming into the league. You're no longer the furthest school out on the western flank, and the Cardinals will be better going forward. But I look at this and say, fans, let's just yank it and get rid of this coach at the drop of a hat. I certainly don't tell my clients that when they buy things. But I also think what Tim Horton told me from Frank Broyles told him and his father, he said, if you've made the wrong hire and you know it, and you absolutely feel I've got to do something, do it. Don't let it stay around. So Sam Pittman, that's his friend. But I know people who fired their own kids. I'd fire mine if they weren't doing the job. And that's just the way it is. But I bet you who would you like to see? Like you say, suddenly Ken Browse looks like a genius. That's what I'm saying. We can't all be right at the same time.
I think you're about to ask me who I would look at as the offensive coordinator ethically until that's a situation. I'll answer it not specifically, but in generality. You've got to find somebody who fits the people that you have here. That turned out to not be the case this time, even though you were going to tinker with it and everything was going to be fine. I mean, it's kind of like how you're just going to turn the offense over after Coach Petrino and everything would still be fine. That was the right decision, by the way. I will always say it's the right decision because it was a legality decision, not a popularity decision, although the fans will never, and there's already clamor for him to come back. But what I would say is what I would like to see, if I could, was how will this search be any different than the last few have been? Now, Hunter Yurchek did not hire Chad Morris. That was done by a committee before Yurchek got here. He did hire Sam Pittman, and it worked really well for a while. You could find different things along the way to pick at. And again, like I said, if they go 3-9, 4-8, you're going to have some tough decisions to make. Yeah, I'll be quoted on this, what I'm about to say. So, and it may come back on me, but that's fine. I'm a big boy. I don't really care who likes me and who doesn't. But there were not necessarily people knocking down the door trying to get in here the last 2 times. That has to be a factor as well. I believe you can find somebody who will take an SEC job and love it, but it's probably not going to be the people that you and I and the fans are sitting here thinking about right now. Lane Kiffin's not going to switch from Ole Miss. Nick Saban's not going to up and want to spend his retirement in Hot Springs, just like Coach Pittman. I would like to see the candidates, and I'm sure that's what's been factored into this decision by people who have a lot more money than I do who make that decision. I would like to know who is the actual candidate, who would actually take the job. Because these last few times I've been sitting here and I've talked to people and they said they wanted a job and they were just acting to get a raise. There were people who, were just stringing Arkansas along. It is not, no matter what. I went to school here. I was inside the program with basketball. It is not a destination job. We need to get over that. It is a really good job, really good to you're boarding on a great job, but it is not a destination job. There are not people who wake up every day and say, man, I want to be the coach at Arkansas, even with all the facilities and stuff you listed. So you have to find the right guy for the right place. This is a different type place than most, and you're fighting uphill in the SEC. Now, I'm not saying you keep Sam Pittman before that. I mean, those are, again, ethical decisions that I don't like to point out. I don't call. When you're a beat writer, you don't call for somebody's head. And it's not a cowardice thing. It's just not ethical on what you do. But I would love to know who would be the potential candidates that are realistic and not just this cover yourself and try to get a race thing that they've had the last few times here. Because it's not been pretty.
Well, you're right. You say, what is the destination job? And also some of the jobs that are so pressure packed, a lot of people don't want to go into that. Even if they're going to get paid a lot of money, their life, they're in a fishbowl, in the pressure. So you saying that the pressure among Arkansas fans is there. It's not as big a state, say, as Louisiana or Alabama. They're a little over 5. Arkansas's just under 3. Arkansas may be pushing 3 with all the growth in the Northwest corner. But they may already be there. I don't know. And I don't know how many people came in through Texas this morning. There's a lot of people in that Northwest corner. 600,000 live up there. That's where you live. Look, if I'm a high school kid, me coming out of Memphis, and I'm being recruited by Arkansas, and I don't have any allegiances, as much as I love hunting and fishing and kayaking and canoeing and outdoor stuff, you'd have me upon arrival. The mulberry, the strawberry, going over there, Van Buren and Jasper, where all the elk are, might pull an elk. But there's plenty of stuff to do there to get in trouble. Dixon Street is just the start of it.
Dixon Street will get you. As Baker Mayfield once said in an interview, Dixon Street will get you.
Yeah. So you can get in trouble anywhere. But the people at Arkansas care. They've got a great basketball program. They everything. Football, and I like what that's one of Gary Rosington in Muscle Shoals, Alabama. Money alone won't solve the problems. And that goes for anywhere. Because how do you explain Texas A&M with a $19 billion endowment, $42 billion at Texas? And Jackie Sherrill was on the show with us last week. And he pointed out that with the price of oil being where it is now, it makes it very, very likely A&M would, he said that would be, I keep thinking, wow, that's a lot of money to pay someone to go away. But they really might do it at A&M this year. So money's not it. It's the right fit, as you said.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I'm not sitting here saying that Coach Pittman needs to be let go. I'm not saying he needs to be kept. I just would love to know, and as a reporter, I would love to know. I'm going to spend time these next few weeks finding out, by talking to people who actually make those decisions. The only thing I know right now, and talking to the people that I trust that are sources, is there's not anybody or not anybody's running to say, here's the check, go ahead and get me somebody now.
Yeah.
The overriding thing was, okay, you got to let somebody go. This and they everybody knew who was going to go. When Coach Pittman didn't answer the question Saturday night, and the fans give us a lot of problems about asking questions, but he was asked, or do you make any changes right now? And instead of saying no, he went, I don't want to talk about that right now, because he knew he was about to let Enos go. And that's been coming from criticism from all over the places. And that as a decision that had to be made, not often made during the middle of the season, but it was the right thing. And I don't know that it gives him cover. I don't know that that's the right phrase, but it at least says, hey, you care as much as I do that you're losing.
Yeah. Well, that's what they got to show. And again, this is the interesting part about it. As much money as Sam Pittman's making, he's got to buy out. He's got generational wealth. Okay. He strikes me as a frugal guy. I mean, he likes his Popeye's chicken and a cold beer. That's really not that expensive. So, but it's a mark of his character. He actually cares about the people around him. And that's important. And I think it'll be easy for him to get quality coaches. But the other problem will be, is someone willing to move thinking, okay, if this doesn't work out in a year, we're going to be back in this boat again. The longer a coach stays at a school, Bobby Bowden stayed so long. Coach Bowden, man, this is unbelievable. I can't believe you've offered me a job to come there. I'm living out in California at UCLA. I got to talk to my wife about it. We got 4 kids, under 10 in school. And what he's going to say is, all right, Liz, and she's going to go, we're going to move our kids across the country, and we may only be there for a year before he's gone. That's what you run into. But
here's another thing that I think is very important and probably will have some bearing on how this season ends up. So far, nobody has jumped off the recruiting list. That's happening in other places. So far, nobody's done that. Will that continue to be a thing? They feel real good about this class as well. They should. There are more 4-stars in this class than have been in the modern era. I mean, it's a better rated class. I'm not saying it's the best class, but a better rated class according to the people who rate them. And will that continue to be the same? That's got to be a factor in here too. If people were jumping off, and there have been several coaches who have fired over the last few years that their recruits gave up on them. And when your recruits give up on them and they're not even here yet, that's an issue. All that's going to be factored into things. I do think that people who like Sam Pittman want him to stay. People who's the homespun thing that he is, and that's I think it's a great thing. The homespun guy is. They're tired of hearing those things, and he hasn't helped himself in the last few press conferences. But I mean, I talk for a living, but I'm not sure I'd say the right thing all the time with the entire state bearing down on me saying you suck or your team sucks. Yeah. I do say some things stupid sometimes. Most often they're pointed out by my wife or my best friends. But it's just there's no clear cut right answer to what the situation is, even though there are passionate people on both sides of the aisle that say he needs one more year or they need to burn it all down. Parker McCullum, burn it all down.
Yeah. Burning down the house. I mean, Talking Heads made a great song about that. You do that, and then here you are again. It takes so many years. It's a lot like building anything, building a business. If you're a lawyer, you've got to build a practice. If you're a financial advisor, it takes years to build a practice. I think getting an offensive coordinator in there. I remember Tuberville did this one time when he brought in Al Borges, and Al came from Indiana, and he brought him in and let his assistants interview the offensive coordinator. And Al's first year at Auburn went 13-0. And hey, I'll claim Alabama national championships like Alabama does. Golf Digest and a couple other people gave it to Auburn. Damn right I'm taking it. But Al Borges was interviewed by that Auburn staff, and they loved him. And he won 41 games in 4 years back when you played 11 games. So I think that's the key. And I think Sam Pittman, he knows what he's doing a lot more than me, but that's what I would do. I'd say, let's get the right. You're right. Got to get the right fit. Hang on with us if you can, Dudley. I want to say something about a couple of our sponsors. ECS House Industries, great folks over there. Chad House, love him. He's a Rhodes grad, Sigma Nu, Hog fan for life. Lives in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, actually in Wynn. The great people over there, 99,000 square foot warehouse, putting out the better roller, the pulverizer, the better chopper. They make the aerators for all of the catfish farms that you see. They're making most of those that you see. They've been made by ECS House Industries in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, right in the heart of the Delta. That's located about 14 miles north of Wynn on Highway 1 near Vandale, where they've got one of about there's one around Earl, and there's one there in Vandale, sweet potato farms. And my goodness, sweet potatoes might be one of the superfoods for sure. You don't even have to put anything on them. They're so good. ECS House Industries. I see these farmers out here every day working all night. Nighttime doesn't mean anything. They just turn on the lights and crank up some Skinner and plow all night and cut and harvest. But proud to have ECS House Industries. Check them out on the website. They're there for you. They're great people to work with. Also, Red River Ford Toyota in Wynn, Arkansas. Justin Wynn, the general manager, texted me this morning again. They're located in Wynn, Arkansas, 45 minutes from Memphis. Go on I-40, get off at the Forest City exit, go about 15 minutes north. If you're on 64 going back and forth to Heber Springs, take a left right there by the Walmart, go about a half mile on Falls Boulevard. You cannot miss Red River Ford Toyota. No payments on new vehicles until 2024. That's on all vehicles. No payments until 2024. Tons of vehicles in stock. They have over 700 used cars, trucks, and SUVs on the lot. Again, John Dobbs Jr., my friend from Memphis, part of the Red River Auto Group with the Ward family, Mitch Ward. Great people, been in the car business, truck business, SUV business a long time. They're great people to deal with. Check them out on the website, redriverfordtoyota.com. And I will say this, Dudley, you made a lot of sense. And, you've been at Arkansas. You've been around that program a long time. And somebody said on here.
42 years now.
42 years. Yeah. And what was it? Recruiting a 60-year-old running back a little tougher than recruiting 18-year-old broke kid. Well, whatever. I mean, but it's a cool place to meet. And I know a lot of Arkansas fans, graduates of that school. It's a hell of a school. Walton College of Business. It's attractive. I mean, again, we know what 1 or 2% of these kids are going to the NFL. People think they all are. That's just not how it works. Okay. And you got to think about, after my career is over, if you got a degree from Arkansas, it's going to open up a lot of doors. Walton College of Business, it's elite. Okay. All right. Before Vince joins us, Dudley, make sure you get it out there, how people can follow you. And then we'll talk with him about Tennessee and how they're going to conquer the rest of the free world this season by beating Kentucky Saturday.
Hogville.net is our website and message board. We're talking about all sports now. Big thing this weekend is Purdue, a potential national champion, coming to Arkansas Saturday, 3 p.m. That game will be on SEC Plus if you can't make it. But that's a big time little scrimmage they've got going here Saturday. Then also fearlessfriday.com, putting a lot of stories up there. Big game this weekend between Greenwood and Pulaski Academy that has my interest. And then if you want to hear about the 7-0 defending Stanley Cup champions, Las Vegas Golden Knights, you can find some stuff there. Cowboys didn't lose this week. That's two weekends in a row. Now they had an off week, but I always get a kick out of how the fans get frustrated, but they're also funny. Some guy put up on Twitter that, or X, I guess it is, that Bye is a 2-touchdown favorite over Arkansas this weekend.
but you have to love the people putting out stuff like that. But look, they got 2 weeks to either get better or to, just talk about all the problems. I think if they're, smart, they'll look forward. And I agree with you. Auburn had 2 weeks off before they played LSU. Their problems were worse. This is the time of the year, and I know Vince is trying to join us, but Dudley, this is the time of year when, as the guys on the team, they gotta come together because your offensive coordinator's gone, and like I said, they weren't playing for him. They had to make that move. So you could see Arkansas just be completely different, kind of like a horse that was tied up in the backyard who's been let loose in the pasture. And it could be a lot of fun. All right. Let's bring. We're getting an echo in here, Vince. Yeah. Can you fix? We got an echo in there.
Yeah, I'm not sure why that is. I can try disconnecting, but I'm not sure why we're getting an echo.
All right. Let's try to reboot. Okay. So anyway, Dudley, that's the marvels of live YouTube and satellite and all these things going on. But I think, and looking at Arkansas, it's not like they were getting blown out of these games. So they're on the edge. So, you make a few adjustments and these guys' attitudes improve. That's if I'm a Hog fan, I'm thinking, okay, we got a new season. We're starting over. And, you just take a look at the schedule for the next game, and I've got them all in front of me. You got Florida in Gainesville. That's who you play when you come back. Nothing to worry about there. You're going on the road. You're not going to be at home. It may pull them together.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of how that stuff goes. All right. Vince.
Can you hear me all right?
Yeah, I'm getting it. Getting an echo.
I'm doing the exact same thing that I normally do when I join you. So
yeah, is that? I wonder. You don't have anything on in the background.
I don't. No, okay. Everything's the same unless the Wi-Fi is not very good. Hard to say, but I don't have anything different. I apologize.
Yeah, that's okay. Keep talking. I'll work on it.
All right. Well, obviously Tennessee losing to Alabama on Saturday was something that has been the huge topic of conversation around here. And all of the issues that popped up and being outscored 27-0 in the second half after, frankly, Tennessee played its best half of football. Joe Milton played his best half of football as well. That was the most complete half Tennessee's played against a really good team. But Alabama made the halftime adjustments, and Tennessee did not have answers. And as we saw in the second quarter at Florida, it was when it goes bad on the road for Tennessee, it goes horribly bad for them. And that was the case. And there's some in-game decisions that everybody's talking about. There was obviously some missed throws. Joe Milton missed open receiver Jacob Warren in the end zone. And the big thing is Tennessee settled for 2 field goals in the first half. They could have put them up 21-0 at the time, and then maybe it's 28-7 at halftime. You're up 21 on Alabama at the half as opposed to 13. When 13 is the biggest comeback under Nick Saban from a halftime deficit that tied it with Georgia in the 2018 college football playoffs. So it makes it more difficult. Maybe Alabama has to play uphill and one-dimensional, and maybe Tennessee's pass rush can pin their ears back and get after the quarterback. That did not happen. Alabama was able to do a lot with a run game and keep Tennessee off balance and block them better. Guys, just like the Texas A&M game. It wasn't exactly the same, but the concept was the same. A&M controlled the line of scrimmage, sacks, tackles for loss in the first half. They couldn't separate from Alabama on the scoreboard. So what happened? Alabama adjusted. A&M didn't have adjustments to those adjustments, and then Alabama won the second half and won the game. And that was the case. It was just more of an avalanche type of situation in the third quarter in favor of Alabama this time.
All right. Dudley?
I'm here. Yeah. It was really interesting. It just was a total switch there. Once it gets rolling down there.
Hey, Dudley.
It's hard to stop.
Let me take both of us off and bring us back. I don't know what's happening.
Hang on. Okay.
Now is this but let's see if this is any better.
If I
Say that, go. We got to reboot.
Yeah, I don't know. If somebody may actually have the show on in the background. That's the only thing that could have happened. Okay. Let's do this. We'll take a quick break and work on it.
Be right back.
Okay.
Unbelievably, every 2 minutes in our communities, a child is either bought or sold for sex. I am Ari Dickey, board member for the Nashville Anti-Human Trafficking Coalition. Join me and millions of others in our fight against human trafficking and for its victims by helping to educate the most vulnerable among us, our middle and high school students. Go to nhtcoalition.org, become a partner, and help keep our families safe, because none of God's children are for sale.
Okay.
Okay.
Still. We're working on our end of it. Vince, let me
try something.
Okay. All right, Dudley, can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
Yeah. It's when Vince is coming on that we're having the problem, and I don't know what
How about
it could
you
be.
want to see if he can talk and me step out?
No, your part is fine.
No, I'm saying if I got off, would it help him?
No, it's something on his end. We're getting feedback. What we're gonna do, we'll continue to talk here. I'm gonna get Audrey try to talk with him, but I can't. We've tried rebooting on our end and everything. So when we do that, it only is happening when he's coming on.
It was definitely a tale of two halves down there with Tennessee and Alabama.
Yeah, it was.
He was talking about the one more touchdown for Tennessee in their first half, and I think they'll probably close that out because Alabama doesn't get the momentum. another good job from a pretty good coach down there in Tuscaloosa, who everybody gave him credit for making adjustments, and they had to, but also his key players started playing better too. I mean, there's a point to that as well, and he can fire you up, and he can yell at you, and everybody thinks it's okay.
Yeah. Well, you know what's funny? Watching Tennessee jump out 7-0. I always like to say the team that scores the most touchdowns wins. That sounds so basic, but you're scoring field goals, you're getting points, but you got to be getting 6 when you go down there in the end zone. And Joe Milton, he's got a great deep ball. It's the short and intermediate passes. That's where he struggles. And had he had a softer touch down there in the first half, they may have been up 21-0, and it puts Alabama in a different mindset. And it's an old axiom is you try to bring on and we'll try it again. Yeah. Joe, we're still getting Vince, we're getting feedback on your end.
I'm gonna try logging on to my computer.
Okay.
Sorry
about that. Thanks. But you look at it, you got to go down there and get touchdowns.
Yeah, and that's the same situation. Another thing that would factor into Dan Enos being let go here at offensive coordinators. Arkansas has not been good especially in the low red zone, as they call it this year. Once they got down there, they knew they were going to get 3 and hadn't been able to really get the touchdowns that you need to, and that was a big factor. 1 touchdown and they win the other day. And they couldn't even get 1.
Yeah. Vince, let's roll.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. There was something, and I apologize. I was trying not to be laughing, but hey, it's live. What are you going to do? You're a pilot at 40,000 feet. My client said, I go, what do you do when you lose an engine? He goes, I got 3 others. So anyway, Dudley, Vince, thank you, and everybody listening. Our sincerest apologies, but I think there was some kind of a feedback. You were on your phone, now you're on your laptop, on your computer,
yes.
But it sounds great. But let's get to that. We were talking about, we were watching that game. Audrey was in tears, but Tennessee gets up 7-0, and then 10-0, 13. You were hoping, wow, that should have been 21-0 if you're a Tennessee fan. They had those first 16 plays looked like they were scripted, but talk about the game and what you thought about, if Joe Milton can throw a softer pass, man, they're gonna beat a lot of people. That guy's a hell of an athlete, hell of a quarterback.
Yeah, well, I mean, he played his best football. He's a tremendous talent. I'm not sure if I could put him on a hell of a quarterback category just yet, Rob. I also think that part of his issue has been throwing the deep ball with accuracy. He's got the arm. There's no doubt about it. Yeah. But the accuracy there's a massive drop-off from Hendon Hooker last year. And here's the thing. There's a massive drop-off from Joe Milton last year on the deep ball. The deep ball, 20-plus yard throws, his numbers were on par, if not better in some instances, than Hendon Hooker. But, yes, it was end-of-game situations a year ago. But guess what? End of game, against lighter competition or when the game's already over, well, some of his stats that aren't great down the field, part of that is against lesser competition this year as well. So it's a matter of him executing regardless of who the opponent is, and he has not done that. Now, the last couple of games, they haven't thrown deep quite as much, but he hit on a couple. That throw, the first touchdown to Squirrel White, was perfect. He had a great deep ball for 30 yards to Ramel Keaton. And here's the thing. Part of the equation is the receivers helped him out. Squirrel White made a great play for him. On the deep ball, Ramel Keaton made a great catch in between the arms of the cornerback. There's a throw at his back hip on a crossing route that Squirrel White made. He helped him out. Joe Milton hasn't gotten helped out by this receiving core either. Now, yes, the missed throw to Warren, he's got to put it on the money there, easy throw. But guess what? Later in the first half, he had a perfectly soft toss throw off his back heel fading away perfectly to McAllen Castle's the other tight end. He executed that one. So it's in him, and Tennessee showed to everyone that thinks that Joe Milton hasn't gotten any better that he can be better. And this receiving core has more ability in them. It's a matter of putting it all together. He played good enough to win. I don't put that on him, even though a lot of fans are still labeling the season and them not having success on their 2 losses on him. I don't agree with that. But the issues aren't necessarily the for him just the red zone. It's just been decisions holding on to the football at times, and they involved him in the run game a lot more too, guys. And that's something that we've all been asking for, and they finally did it. But he was their leading rusher in the game. They want to involve him in the run game, but not to be the leading rusher with 59 yards. Tennessee's running backs had averaged 220 yards per game as a trio. They only had 74 in that game. So it's either one or the other. Don't get the passing game, you have a dominant run game. You get the run game back, but from the quarterback, but not from the running back. So they haven't been able to put it all together once. And then, Alabama deserves a lot of credit too, because they took advantage of Tennessee not finishing twice, having to settle for field goals when it could have been a 21-point deficit. And look, some of that, Dante Thornton had a drop inside the 5-yard line on the first drive. So maybe it doesn't come down to missing the throw to Jacob Warren. Maybe somebody makes a play for him and you get in the end zone another way. Or maybe Tennessee doesn't give up on the run game that got them down in the first place. And instead of throwing the ball all the time, maybe you continue to run the ball and you get in the end zone with momentum. So there's a lot, and then personnel decisions on some others. So it's a whole big collective part of the equation, not just Joe Milton.
I agree. I'd say a hell of a quarterback. He's got all the raw stuff, but it's the short and intermediate passes. It's always something, isn't it, Dudley?
Yeah, and I'm sure that Alabama players wanted to smoke those cigars after last year when Tennessee, beat them. Why you can't depend on revenge and avenging losses and all that. I think that motivation factors into there, and I'm sure that there was paint coming off the walls in that with that halftime speech, But as you said, the consistency at quarterback, the receivers helping him out, running backs helping him out, it just was not there in the second half to the extent it was in the first. And we were talking about when you were getting hooked back up here, Arkansas's had these same problems in the low red zone. They'll get down there, they know they can get the field goal. All they had to do was score one touchdown on Saturday, and they would have won a game that nobody really should, It was not a masterpiece, but it's the consistency on offense each week. And, teams that lose games they're not supposed to usually have those type issues.
Well, and another big part of it is the coaching element of it too. Josh Heupel went for it twice on 4th down back in their own end. One at the 34.5-yard line, another one at the 47-yard line. One in the first half, they were able to overcome and get a stop after that on an interception in the end zone. But that was curious in the play call. They go bunch set, and then they try to run quarterback power outside the tackle. They don't have numbers to that side. And then they have guys not blocking defenders. And so it's just a lot of things that broke down in that situation. Tennessee just has not been very good in short yardage, 3rd, 4th down especially. And then the second one was, I think, the most costly one that I disagreed with the most. Alabama had already run off 10 quick points in the second half on Tennessee. In fact, Alabama got the ball to start the half, 2-play drive, 29-yard run by McClellan, then the long touchdown pass to Bond. Boom. You got a touchdown. Now you got the crowd back in it, momentum. Now it's a 1-score game just like that. So then Alabama adds a field goal. They're within 20-17. And Tennessee on 4th, and not just inches, 1.5 yards from the 47, decides to go for it. And then they don't make it. Alabama, 5 plays, zooms down the half field, takes the lead, doesn't look back. So you already have momentum against you. Now the crowd is even more into it. Now Alabama's juice feeling like, hey, we can go take the lead here real quick on a short field. And that's exactly what happened. Whereas if you punt with Jackson Ross, who had not only a career day, he set the Tennessee single game record for punt average in a game with 52.3. Now, some of those are off the roll because Kool-Aid let some of those bounce, but part of that is the rugby style kick that guys have a hard time reading, and so they let it go. And so you use your special teams and defense to try to pin Alabama back, force them to come out of their own end. Maybe they don't sustain a drive. Maybe your defense gets not only the momentum back, but the ball back, and maybe you get it at midfield and you start over. And so, and you can protect field position in that game. Instead, Josh Heupel was very aggressive, typically, decides to go for it. His reasoning was, well, we had a play we thought would be successful, so we ran it. Well, sure. Everything in your playbook you think is going to be successble, but it's a matter of risk reward. So
here's one thing I wanted to throw in there. The whole, I believe I'm an old school guy, I like running football and all those kind of things. And I know that this book somewhere, this analytical book says you can get this, 4th and 3, it says to go for it here at your own 34, but every once in a while you got to have a feel for things. And you just, talked about it really, really well. And what was happening at the time, you give them a short field, you're just messing up. Analytics are fine, but feel for the game has to be in there too.
Yeah, and I'll say this, Josh Heupel was asked about how much he uses analytics. He says, we have access to it, but he said it's not a big factor. I just think that's his nature, to be aggressive, because he believes in his offense, and that's kind of his style. And he wants to give his guys confidence, so they go for it a lot of times in those short yardage situations. But here's the thing, gonna kind of have to read the room. And Tennessee doesn't have last year's offense where you're going to pick those up, and you have a quarterback that can get you those yards on the ground pretty easily. And teams are gassed, things like that. This is a different type of team, and you're playing different style of games. Look at how they won a low-scoring battle last week, or last game against Texas A&M. They won the game based on special teams and defense. So that's the kind of game it was. I think you got to kind of adjust and coach to that. And look, to Josh Heupel's credit, he knows the game. He knows his personnel. He also hasn't had a lot of these instances where you could really, second guess him in terms of these decisions. There have been a few, but nothing like previous coaches at Tennessee. Like, some people are trying to, act like he's Butch Jones now. No way. That's just insane. But that's one where I think you could easily second guess him. And then personnel as well. Dylan Sampson, your perimeter back, you want to get out in space. He was the running back there. And maybe my biggest issue of all is what benefits Tennessee is throughout the entire game is tempo and spacing. So what do they do in short yardage and in the red zone? They slow the pace down. They go to the end of the play clock, and then they bunch their set. They don't have offensive linemen that are just bulldozers or first-round picks. So keep your space and utilize that, and then utilize tempo to get a quick snap, and then you convert the yards and you keep going. But they didn't do either of those two things, and then just a lot of things were not right for me to where I would not have gone for it. But, defense had to do their job after that, and they just weren't as good against Bama in that second half, with Bama running with Milroe a lot more and part of the adjustments that they had.
What about the Tennessee defensive front? Alabama and Tennessee both going into that game were top 4 in the country, tackles for loss and sacks. Tennessee's got a lot of opportunities in front of them. They've got Georgia. They've got Kentucky Saturday, and that ain't going to be an easy game. 2 years ago, when the Vols were on the road, they only had the ball 14 minutes and 47 seconds and won a game at night in Lexington 48-45. Mm-hmm. I don't see that kind of a shootout this year, but Tennessee showed, man, they can jump on top of you quickly. And how much can you change Joe Milton? If he a little softer touch on that ball, and he's a completely different quarterback, Can you change that at this point in his career?
Well, yeah, because we've seen him do it. Some of his best throws have been sort of finesse fade throws off his back foot, sort of fading away. And actually, for whatever reason, those have been on the money. And I think that at times he just gets so amped up in the moment. He was so good in practice. He was so good last year, and when he took over and the way he played in the Orange Bowl. So it's a matter of the moment. Can he change? It's not changing him completely. It's him settling down and executing it. And then also it's on the coaches to use him in the best situations you possibly can. And what will change him also is getting some help. You know what? Yeah. Receiver catches the ball on the previous drive. You get in the end zone. Maybe he's not as tight on that other throw to Warren. He misses that throw. But look, Joe Milton was not the story in this game. It was adjustments. It was coaching, and it was them not being able to cash in the red zone in that first half to have a bigger lead. Those are the bigger stories.
Yeah, it was rough. Look, unfortunately, we run out of time for this segment. We got Jordan Hill, 24/7 Sports on Georgia coming up next. But Vince, man, sorry about the technical problems. I don't know what that was. Sometimes this stuff just happens, and like we always laugh about the old days, you would buy satellite time for a live window, and as soon as you went live to your talent, would just go all static. But thank you for working with it, and Dudley, sure. Y'all are welcome to hang on if you can. We love it because I like getting different opinions. Jordan, we're going to talk about that Georgia-Florida game, and we got a lot. I'm going to tell you, a lot of questions already coming in. And Vince, tell people real quick how they can follow you, keep up with all the great work you do, because I want everybody that's on this show to be followed because we appreciate what you do to make this show happen.
Well, I appreciate you, and thanks for your patience with those connection issues. I would stay on, but we have a mandatory programming meetings, which is always the most enjoyable part of our week, right? Going to meetings. Those are great. So I got to get to that. But you can follow me on X at Vince Sports. That's also the same handle for all the socials, IG, Facebook, and even my YouTube channel. And then we've got blogs on the website, 991thesportsanimal.com. And then our podcast in the podcast section of the morning show I do with John Wilkerson. He and I are the Tennessee baseball broadcast team, and we work together on a bunch of other shows besides the daily morning show, which is 6 to 9 a.m. Eastern, 5 to 8 a.m. Central, and do Vol Network pregame interviews with players. Jabari Small will be the guy I talked to this week, and just a ton of stuff. We got basketball about to start, and interviews for that are starting up. So there's just a lot. So, yeah, that's where you can find me, Vince Sports, on all the socials.
Well, you got a great job. Have fun in the meeting. And a lot of times you have a meeting about the meeting, so you got to do that. But,
yeah, I'd love to stay on too, but I got to go down and rake the field behind me for the baseball game coming up later today. So.
Hey, both of y'all, thank you so much for being on. Okay,
you guys,
later.
Okay, take care. All right, Jordan Hill back here with us. Jordan, let's do this. I want to say something real quick about a couple of our sponsors. One of them, Red River Ford Toyota in Wynn, Arkansas. Check them out on the website, redriverfordtoyota.com. And this is just a message from the general manager. No vehicle payments on any vehicles on the lot until 2024. They've got tons of vehicles on the lot for new Ford and Toyota trucks, cars, and SUVs. We've also got over 700 pre-owned cars, trucks, and SUVs on the lot. Check them out on our website, redriverfordtoyota.com. They deliver anywhere, and that's a promise that they make. Jordan, man, Dogs got the big one Saturday. This is one of my favorite rivalries in all of college football. Let's talk about it. And already I got a question coming in here. King Tut in Leeds, Alabama. There's a Buc-ee's there. How different will Georgia look without Brock Bowers? Well, I mean, they got a lot of talent, but Jordan, what do you think they'll do differently? They've still got running backs, other wide receivers. Last time I checked, they're recruiting number 1 or 2 in the country every year lately.
Well, I think the biggest thing is the fact that, even when Brock was in there, he was obviously the number 1 guy, and rightfully so. But They've had a lot of guys that they've fed the ball to quite a bit, guys that they've targeted in the passing game. Dominic Lovett. Ladd McConkey is who I'm interested in the most because he's been banged up all year, had that bye week. We'll get to see how he has responded, having a little bit more time. But yeah, it's going to be interesting. Carson Beck's not going to have that security blanket. You look at that Auburn game, especially that fourth quarter, it was like, hey, I'm gonna throw it in the vicinity of Brock Bowers and he's gonna make a play. At one point he made back-to-back one-handed catches, and the first one was not an on-target throw, but he just went out and made the play. So it's gonna be harder, no doubt, not having Brock Bowers, but they've got a lot of weapons, and I think that they did a good job before he got hurt of facilitating the ball, throwing it to different guys. But you got to have a Rara Thomas step up, a Ladd McConkey, a Dominic Lovett. Guys are going to have to take on bigger roles because, you don't have one of the best players in the country out there on the field.
Well, you don't. But Kirby Smart, one thing him and his staff do, they're great at challenging every player to be ready when their number's called up. Let's talk about the other tight ends on the roster, because Brock Bowers is like a running back. I think it was a running back out of high school, wasn't he, out of Napa, California? That's why he's so physical at tight end and he has such great moves. But there are other players on that roster besides the ones that you mentioned.
Definitely. I mean, and it starts with Oscar Delp. He's a sophomore. He was one of the top-rated tight ends in last year's class, and he kind of got thrown into the fire in the Peach Bowl because Darnell Washington gets hurt. I think that might have been the first quarter. And all of a sudden, you're a true freshman. They're saying, all right, go out there with Brock Bowers and play against Ohio State. And he performed pretty well. It wasn't perfect, but I mean, a true freshman, imagine what he was going through. And, he's going to play the most with Brock banged up and coming back from that ankle surgery. And Kirby made it a point that, hey, he doesn't have to be Brock Bowers, and that it's not all put on him. That, everything that might have been going to Brock in the past, some of those receivers we talked about, have to step up and kind of pick up some of that slack. So the other guy, too, at tight end is Lawson Lucky. He's a true freshman. Got a ton of buzz during the spring. Lucky number 7. I don't think that was by accident. Got hurt during fall camp. I think that really hindered his role this year. And it's kind of ironic. He had tightrope ankle surgery, too. Had, a similar to injury to what Brock had. But he's played a little bit in the last few weeks. He's still got a ways to go as a true freshman. But I wouldn't be surprised if we see number 7 out there a good bit. Very talented guy, a guy with a lot of potential.
Well, looking at this game, Florida, they've been winning. I like this. Jordan was at the bottom of the laundry basket this morning with that Tennessee colored shirt.
I do want to say something about that real quick, Rob.
Yeah,
Maury
you got to address
pointed that out.
Maury.
We had a tour at Sanford Stadium before the season. They had done just some renovations, and I wore this shirt, and I didn't think anything of it. And somebody posted a video just of everything you could see, and I was in it. Oh, my God. I thought the junkyard was going to come after me, Rob. They were not thrilled. But I told them, I said, look, somebody's got to make this orange look good. It might as well be me.
That's right. Absolutely. And, that's the funny – that's what I love about this show is that everybody, all the fan bases are on top of each other. I've remarried a Vol for life, oldest daughter, Mallory, Alabama grad, and my 3 kids, all Auburn, and me. It makes it a lot of fun. It makes it a lot of fun. And Maury came back and said, maybe he's doing it to aggravate the Gators. Very clever. You're very smart. You'll be in Jacksonville. Will you pay homage to Skinnerd and go to the Hell House? And that's a great, also 38 special. That's an awesome venue. I mean, the tailgating around the stadium, it's different. It's not a campus, but it's still an awesome atmosphere. Now, I don't want to sound like a Sadducee or a Philistine and say, you shouldn't, you should move the game away, or you should have rivalries, because Auburn and Alabama did it, but it was a different circumstances. As Coach Dye used to say, well, the guy parking your car and selling the programs and, selling you hot dogs is wearing an Alabama hat. And he goes, that ain't a neutral site. I mean, they tried to make it that way, but not really. Jacksonville, how neutral is it? You've been to countless games down there, but God, that's an awesome. It's just, I love Jacksonville, Duval County, the largest landmass city in America.
Yeah, I would have to imagine Georgia fans would agree that it's probably become more neutral in the last 6 or 7 years with Georgia. I think Georgia's won 5 of the last 6 or something like that. But
Yeah.
on the whole, I mean, I think it's pretty neutral because you've got a lot of Georgia fans who make a trip out of this, and every year, hey, we're going to go down, like Rob mentions, to St. Simon's. We're going to go stay for the weekend. And that's the thing that when there was talk about getting rid of the game being down there, I do want to see a game in the Swamp. I've heard it's the loudest stadium. I've never been because I've never had a reason to, for the most part, covering Georgia all these years. But I do like the fact that this is something that, fans have always kind of had and could always say, well, we're going to take the family. We've always done this and we're going to go down to Jacksonville. But yeah, I think on the whole, it's pretty split as far as the fans. I know the players have said as much, seeing one side red and one side blue. But I'd have to imagine it's a lot closer to that 50-50 split in the last few years compared to, when I was growing up and, and watching this game in the 2000s. I mean, pretty much every year it was, okay, Florida's going to win. It's just going to be by how much.
Well, it is. It's just the whole the history of that place, and that's what's so cool about it. College football, a lot has changed. We always get through it, but it's Jekyll Island and Fernandina Beach and Flagler Beach and people coming up there and staying for 4 or 5 days. That's what makes it so much fun. But what really, and I got to play this out of respect to the great one. Now, you're young enough. You remember him, but who will ever forget this one? This is one of the greatest calls ever. Here we go.
Bird down on the 8. In trouble. Got a block behind him. Going to throw and a run. Complete to the 25. To the 30, Lincoln's got 35, 40. Lincoln's got 45, 50, 45, 40. 1, Lindsay, 25, 20, 50, 10, 5. Lindsay stop. Lindsay stop. Lindsay stop.
Now, that is Jacksonville to me. I mean, it's. Can you hear that? Okay.
Oh yeah. The best part is the property being destroyed because you know that there were some Georgia fans that that they had to pay the deposit on some of the places they were in.
The booth came apart. The stadium fell down. Now they do have to renovate this thing. They'll have to rebuild it now. This is incredible. This game has always been called the world's greatest cocktail party. Do you know what is going to happen here tonight? And up at St. Simon's and Jekyll Island and all those places where all those dog people have got these condominiums for 4 days. Man, there's going to be some property destroyed tonight.
I mean, you think about that. That game, Al Michaels and Keith Jackson were doing the call on ABC. That's back in the old days when you could only be on TV 5 times maximum over a 2-year period. And to do what they did, it was just that. I think the game, I hope it stays there. I mean, again, they moved it in 94 and 95, and Florida won those 2 games like 52-0 or something like that. But let's be honest, recruiting. Well, technically you can't recruit there. It's not on campus. I'm willing to bet you a couple of chickens on a stick at the Chevron station in Oxford, Mississippi, that some recruits find their way there. Somehow they find their way there.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. It's really fickle. It's like they can leave tickets. So this year, Florida is designated as the home team. Yeah, exactly. I'm out here looking for a co-signer for some of this stuff. That's how young I am. But for like Florida is technically the home team this year. My understanding is they can basically leave tickets at will call, for these recruits, but they can't like talk to them. They can't, they're not supposed to. And it goes both ways when Georgia's the home team, but it's kind of funny just to see, how that plays out. And I think, Kirby was asked about it because he's talked about it a bunch over the years. He wanted it moved for a while. He said this week, I'm kind of past basically caring. I mean, what they do with it. For me, I wanted to stay down there. And there was a long time where I wanted it moved, but I just think the tradition of it, I just think look at the sport, look at Texas and Oklahoma joining, which I think there is some good to it, but so much changing, Georgia and Auburn maybe not playing every year, which don't get me started on that, Rob. I could get up on a soapbox and preach a sermon on that. But let's keep Jacksonville. Let's keep Georgia, Florida. As good as both these teams are recruiting, Kirby's established it. I do think Billy Napier's making good progress on that front. They can afford to not to have one less home game. They can afford to not bring people on campus 1 week, because I guarantee you they'll be okay. The coaches before them did it, and I think that, especially when you consider the financial ramification. I mean, Jacksonville is going to continue paying these two schools quite a bit of money, and especially with these stadium renovations coming in for Jacksonville, we may have a small window where these games move on campus. But I'd like to see it stay for the long term.
Yeah, and I think that tradition, we love tradition. Sometimes you got to change, but that game is special, just like the Red River shootout down in Dallas. Golly, Ken Capps was on last week or week before. He's on most Fridays with us, Football Writers Association of America out in Dallas. I think he's been to 45 straight Red River shootouts in Dallas. And that one, it's the Texas State Fair. You've got Big Tex there, the 70-foot cow. Howdy, folks. Welcome to the Texas State Fair. It's an awesome deal. They launched their new food this year. You ready for this? Deep fried butter. Deep fried butter. And Big Tex, about 11 years ago, Dave Cody reminded me, burned down. 70 feet tall. He burned and fell to the ground. And Bo Carter, National Football Foundation writer out there, who's on with us every week with Ken, said a local funeral home had a funeral for Big Tex. And Big Tex is back, though. But it's the whole thing. Everybody else has a fair for 7 days, 10 days. Texas, 3 weeks of the Texas State Fair. So where else can you eat 12,000 calories in 23 seconds? The guy said, well, you'll walk it off during the day. He goes, no, 12,000 calories. That's deep fried butter. Jacksonville, talk about that atmosphere. Here's Talladega Tom. What are your thoughts? You addressed them, but the atmosphere there, your fans, Jacksonville is a large town, but it's like Memphis. It's one of the largest small towns in America. You don't feel like you're in Miami or Atlanta when you're in Jacksonville.
Definitely. And it's fun. I think I may have only gone to 1 or 2 games as a fan in the stands, but I can remember being there, and it's a lot of fun when your team's winning. It's not a lot of fun when you are on the losing side. And I can remember, I want to say this was Will Muschamp's last year. Everyone went in. I want to say this was 2014. I would have to double check this, but everybody thought Georgia was going to name the score, and they were going to fire Will Muschamp. And Florida ran, Rob, like the same 3 run plays and ran for probably 250, 300 yards. Beat Georgia. I think there was a fake field goal or a fake punt. And it was late October. It was cold, but it was awfully cold standing outside that stadium. I remember waiting on some of my friends to meet back up with them and just being like, man, how did this take this turn? And that's what makes these games fun is having that experience. And I know a ton of people. I get the people that want to see it on campus. I think the atmospheres would be very fun for those games. But there's nothing like Jacksonville. And you consider the tailgating aspect of it and kind of doing the whole camping out and making a day of it. It makes for a really fun experience.
It really does. And I'm sitting here looking at some of these comments. I'm trying to get them. They either come in or I'm trying to type them in as they come in on the text line. But Buford, I love this one. Buford, I guess that's Buford T. Justice. He'll go in there and I want a Diablo sandwich and a Dr. Pepper. Buford in Cordell, Georgia. Greg Sankey's a smart man. He's waiting until July for Oklahoma and Texas, obviously, to come in the league. Then he will have the votes to get the 3-6 schedule model. Jordan, what I'm hearing is that it's about 50-50 right now. There's a certain number of schools in the SEC that don't want to have to play a 9th game in the conference. They want to have some easy games so they can be bowl eligible. Well, raise your standard. That's not a good standard. You should expect to win every game. And it's also frustrating for fan bases that feel that way. But I think he's right. We got to go to 3-6.
Definitely.
You got to protect those great rivalries.
Definitely. And Rob, you hit on the biggest thing. And the biggest complaint I have is that you're kowtowing to the teams that want to get bowl eligible to go to Shreveport and go to Memphis and barely sneak in and play a CUSA
Hey, I love
team.
Memphis.
Yeah, no disrespect there, but why are we? Think about if Mike Sly was still SEC commissioner.
Yes.
He would get everybody in a room and say, "Look, this is what we're doing." And Greg Sankey, I don't know that Greg Sankey has that in him, and I think it's going to be to the detriment of the conference. And I understand you want to have everybody, on board, and you want to have everybody in line and wanting to do what they feel like is best for the conference. But you got to consider what the fans want at least a little. There is no Georgia fan in the world that wants to see Georgia and Missouri play more regularly than Georgia Auburn or Georgia Kentucky. And, I know that there's some fun games in there, but I mean, I think about growing up, my family's Georgia fans. I can remember the Georgia Auburn game every year. I can remember being 8 or 9, jumping up on the couch when Michael Johnson catches a touchdown on 4th and 15. Like, those are the games that matter. We grew up, one of my friends from elementary school, her dad was a big Auburn fan. So we would always, kind of talk back and forth. I just think it's really frustrating that I don't feel like the fan perspective is taken into account in this. And, I don't think there's going to be a ton of people that just say, well, I'm not going to watch this anymore. But I get people being frustrated and I get people not wanting to pay to go to these games. It'd be a lot easier for me to say, I'm going to pay $100 to go see Georgia Auburn compared to, Georgia Kentucky, Georgia Vanderbilt, Georgia Arkansas. I think these rivalries have to matter because if you don't care what the fans say, then, they're not going to put up the money like they have in the past.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And going back to, Buford's comment, it's awful that we have schools in the SEC that would rather stay at go to a 1-7 than preserve these great rivalries. LSU Florida is a great rivalry. Okay, it's a really good one. Obviously Auburn Georgia, Tennessee Alabama, Tennessee Florida, Tennessee Georgia. These are the really good games. I remember back in '92 when we went to the divisional format in the SEC. It was so weird, Tennessee playing Florida, because they only played them occasionally. And everybody remembered Tennessee and Georgia in 1980 when, Womack was the running back for Georgia. And he goes out and he goes, and I'm listening on my little white transistor radio, which I still have at Simmons Liberty Bowl Stadium. I was at a game and I was listening, and they said, and I was listening to the Georgia Network, AM 750 WSB out of Atlanta. And I'll never forget, they're going, now they're going to go to the freshman out of Wrightsville, Georgia. Here comes Walker in. He's a big guy running out on the field. And, I'll never forget that. And Lauren Smith going, Larry, what a run by the freshman. They were just blown away. And
the funniest thing I do want to just put in on that because my grandfather was a huge Tennessee fan. My dad was a big Georgia fan. My dad's probably in high school when that game is. My dad loves to point out on that call when Herschel runs over Bill Battle.
Yeah.
Larry never says touchdown. They're listening to it going, well, what happened? How far did he? And then eventually he says it. But I think that's my favorite part of that story is that it's a great call. Oh my God, he never says that he scored until, you don't hear it in the clip that is still out there today.
Yeah. And I'm going to get Lauren Smith on hopefully Friday or Saturday. And Lauren's on with us a lot. And Lauren tells a story. He says, well, most people don't remember that the play before that, Georgia had a fumble in the backfield and Herschel ran the ball down about 12 yards deep and kept the drive alive. And so we don't know what history would have shown. I mean, just Lauren is a poet laureate. He's the patriarch of Georgia Southern football. And, you have to appreciate when something's going on at Auburn. I know these rivals are intense, but when they put those statues up October 8th, I was so frustrated because Mallory was getting married and we had to be at the rehearsal dinner and I had to leave Auburn. Oh, God. And I had to miss it. So my son Wilson is in school and he's walking across campus and he said, "What time is that event?" And I told him 3 o'clock or so. And I said, "I've got to be up at Mallory's still." And I had to miss it. But Lauren Smith, Gene Stallings, Vince Dooley. I mean, it was just the Alabama people there, Auburn people, Georgia. There's a connection of those three. You have to have the 3-6 model. I mean, it is going to be criminal. It's going to be like shutting down the beaches in Florida, no more country music in Nashville, and no more snow in, Colorado in the winter. You got to do it. And you're right. Your standard, the rest of the league, the top teams shrinking to make other schools feel less uncomfortable is a disservice to everyone. Raise the bar. Okay. You got to do it. And I think Greg Sankey, you're right about Mike Slav. He would have put the people in the room and said, "All right, here's what we're going to do." There wouldn't have been up for debate. And you're smart. I mean, we're kidding about you being young. I mean, I've got my kids are your age. You're very smart. You've also pointed out some really cool stuff, Jordan, that I think is really neat over the years that you've been on here with us. And you point out about Georgia. Growing up in North Georgia, the Georgia-Tennessee game is a big deal. Northeast Georgia, Clemson or South Carolina. South Georgia, a lot of Florida. And West Georgia, it's Auburn. So, Georgia's got a lot of rivals. And this is Doug Dean in Birmingham. The AU Dose is on with us. Jordan Hill, 24/7 Sports covers Georgia. You nailed it, Jordan. And I would love it to have you write like a column because, people think the young people don't get it. You absolutely get it. You know why? Because you spend a lot of time with your grandfather and your dad and people, and that wisdom got through to you.
Definitely. And I appreciate
definitely can tell.
I appreciate that. Yeah. It's going to be interesting to see what happens with this scheduling thing. I mean, you hit on it. It's inexcusable if they don't go to a 9 game. And it's going to be really interesting when they make this vote. And more importantly, if they do go with 8 the next time that Greg Sankey talks to a big group of media. Because I'll tell you, Rob, if I am there when that happens, I mean, I'm not going to be afraid to ask him what they're doing because there's just no excuse. I mean, to me, it's if you stick with the 8-game model, you're afraid of competition and you're afraid of playing the top teams and getting them knocked out. But you got the playoff expanding. You shouldn't worry about that. Yeah. And you consider the fact, on the whole, this year, SEC from top to bottom has kind of been down compared to the past years. Yeah. So there's just no excuse. And I'm just hoping that cooler heads will prevail and that we'll see this thing expand to 9 conference games.
Yeah, Doug, real quick before Jordan goes, we were talking about that 1-7 versus 3-6. You're there in Birmingham, and you're for 3-6, aren't you? I mean, I can't imagine not playing Georgia. Makes your head explode.
If you inject me with sodium pentothal, Rob, truth serum, and make me say, do I want to play Georgia as an Auburn man the last 5 years? Maybe not. Maybe not. But guess what? I wouldn't be alone in that. But no, I've got a lot of great Georgia friends. We have managed through the years to, for the most part, not let it become hateful and a lot of vitriol. But, once in a while we do have to turn the hoses on them in Jordan Hare, Rob, just to help, fan safety, just to safely clear the stadium.
Yes. Cool.
It's hot. It gets super hot,
Yeah, we're just trying to prevent heat exhaustion. And then I remember UGA trying to trying to defang, if you will, one of our wide receivers in the end zone. But
Robert
no,
Baker.
on a serious note, I think that if we're going to have, which we are, a 16 team, and eventually, I guess, a larger number than that. Honestly, I'm pretty happy if it stays at 16. If you look at who those 16 are, for God's sake.
Yeah.
But I think that the product, the ability to get great games on TV, and the fact that if we're going to say it's a fair playing field, and you don't have one program, you can guess who I have in mind, Rob and Jordan, that gets to play Vandy every year, and we get to play Georgia every year. And then the rotation and the ability for fans to make every venue over a period of just a few years, I think is the way to go. And I also think it squares nicely, it aligns nicely with a 12-team playoff. But the only thing I would say is I would like to confirm with the playoff selection committee that they will be fair to the SEC. And I think most years, I'll say it, most years, barring maybe one like this year where nobody can be dominant, it seems. You still got undefeated Georgia, but there should be 3 SEC teams in the 12-team playoff almost every year. I think 3 is the over and under. Jordan, I wanted to say, because you got to scoot, I imagine, one of my talking points at this as we head into November, which is going to be fascinating but very different from recent years, is I will say if Kirby Smart can make the adjustments, I think he can, and play a very tough November that we didn't see coming, did we, in August? And I mean, you can debate, is it really tough? Well, the games will prove that. But if Kirby Smart can, even if they lose one regular season game and they go win in Atlanta and go on to win the 3rd in a row, that would hands down be Kirby's best coaching job, in my opinion, so far. And guess what? If Nick Saban can run the table from here, which sure won't be easy, especially if he gets to Atlanta against you guys, that would be Nick Saban's best coaching job that he's ever had. Do you disagree or agree?
No, I think that's right. I mean, I think the only argument you could make on Kirby's point would probably be maybe 2017, even though they wound up not winning the championship, just because it was not looking good after that first year. They went 8-5. They nearly lost to Nichols. They lost to Vanderbilt at home. And, I don't think anybody was ready to pull the plug, but people had a lot of questions. So 17 is probably the only other case I would make. But I think, especially in this most recent run, this has been Kirby's best coaching job. And I think so on Nick. I mean, because especially early in the year, I mean, we continued to have questions. You saw that Texas game. And they just continued to move right along. And I don't think you can discredit that, Nick is not the youngest guy. And I think it would be easy for him to just kind of go through the motions. But I think you've seen them continue to grind it out. And I know, you can poke holes in some of their wins, but you find a way to win at the end of the day. That doesn't really matter. And I think Nick Saban and Kirby Smart are a lot alike in this way. Win by 50, win by 1. They'll be satisfied. You'd obviously want to win big, but if they get a win and keep it rolling, they're going to be happy and they're going to continue working hard and trying to clean up things to be better the next week.
Yeah. Now, on the other hand, if given the year we're having the SEC, if by some wild turn of events you see someone not named Georgia, that's really unlikely, especially after Tennessee lost last Saturday. Someone not named Georgia play Ole Miss in Atlanta, then we know the apocalypse is near.
Yeah, that's right. Hey, listen, great stuff. I love this. Jordan, thanks so much for joining us. Let people know how they can follow you. You're a professional. And those of you watching, this is how you handle it, just like what Doug's doing. You got professionals on here, they know what they're talking about. Always be prepared. But this is one of the best segments we've had. And every time you're on here, it's a lot of fun.
I appreciate that, Rob. Yeah, Jordan D. Hill, Jordan Davis Hill on Twitter at Dogs247. I know we talk a lot of football, but look out for basketball today. Georgia's after a 5-star Asa Newell. He's announcing his commitment at 3. I think he's going to pick Georgia, and that would be a very huge win for Mike White and company. So keep an eye out over at Dogs247 for more on that.
Goodness.
Yeah, that is big news. And then you're also very active on Twitter, so that's the key. you're a nonstop, like a rolling newspaper. So appreciate it. Look forward to your visit next week. Have fun down in Jacksonville. Pay homage to Skinnerd.
You bet. I got to. See ya.
All right. We'll be right back with more. Doug Dean in Birmingham. He has got an agenda, talking points. You're going to want to hear this. Get pen and paper handy right after this.
Unbelievably, every 2 minutes in our communities, a child is either bought or sold for sex. I am Ari Dickey, board member for the Nashville Anti-Human Trafficking Coalition. Join me and millions of others in our fight against human trafficking and for its victims by helping to educate the most vulnerable among us, our middle and high school students. Go to nhtcoalition.org, become a partner, and help keep our families safe, because none of God's children are for sale.
All right, Rob Browne back here with you, with Doug Dean. Doug, I'm looking at these talking points. Have at it. This is great stuff.
Yeah. First of all, good morning. Good to see you, Rob. And I want to ask you, because I know that a huge swath, love that word swath, a huge swath of your listeners and viewers share our love of the great outdoors, whether you are in a duck blind at ridiculous dark hours, or you're a pine tree like me over the Cahaba River, with 15 degrees at 6 a.m., the love of the outdoors. Are you getting the place good to go for this coming duck season?
Oh yeah, we have been working, and it's unbelievable how much work goes into preparation for duck season. And one of our new members, it's really cool, Paul Peoples in Tony, Alabama, Ardmore, but he works in Huntsville with Joe McGinney, an engineer from Auburn who went to Auburn with some of my clients. They all went to Auburn together, have come up with the coolest new product I've seen since 1999, when the spinning wing decoys came out. It's a new product alert. And Paul is a member. Paul Peoples is a member of our Cherry Farm Hunting Club now. Chatter Duck Decoy. It's the first ever mechanical decoy designed to revolutionize your waterfowl hunting experience. Cutting edge decoy combines ingenious design and technology to replicate the authentic sounds and movements of chattering ducks on the water, attracting waterfowl like never before. You can get it at Max Prairie Wing in Stuttgart, Rogers Sporting Goods in Kansas City, and of course, chatterduck.com. But yeah, tremendous. Over here, starting to see a lot of speckle-bellied geese right now. Every night you hear them in that beautiful sound. But I'm with you, Doug. I don't think people appreciate how gorgeous the Cahaba River is in Alabama. We have the Wolf River up in Memphis, the Conservancy, but the Cahaba River and the Black Belt of Alabama is, God, it's gorgeous.
Yeah, so we'll get on to sports real quickly, but what you just said reminded me. I'm gonna have to have you to my hunting lodge. I'm calling it a lodge now. It more aptly was a slightly redneck hunting camp heretofore, but we have stepped up to the plate. Fresh coat of Sherwin-Williams paint on the, putting new furniture in the place, repainting inside, and I told the guys it will heretofore be the Dry Creek Lodge on historic Cahaba River. Does that have a ring to it, Rob?
It sounds really good. And we're getting vests, hats, shirts, hoodies, wide brim hats made at Hewlett and Dunn Boot and Clothing Company for the Cherry Farm. And I'll get you one. It's going to be that Dry Creek Lodge. That sounds like something out in Colorado. That sounds beautiful.
I tell you that we apologize to no one in central Alabama in terms of the beauty and wildlife on our 2,000 acre lease. The farmhouse is what most farmhouses are: comfortable, we've got DirecTV, we've got all the creature comforts. It's just probably not a destination venue for you and the bride on your anniversary, if you will. But hey, listen, that D-back and Phillies game last night, Rob, what baseball? I'm not the biggest baseball fan. I do love Butch Thompson and love talking to him when that season is up and rolling. I talked to Butch this morning. I'll share a little of that. He's just a great personality, pure positivity and energy. But anyway, I asked Butch, I said, the randomness of Major League Baseball. I mean, it is so tough to be a Braves fan when all you do is win. Playoffs come around and you just the bats go a little bit cold. But last night, the hero of the game, Corbin Carroll, exactly a year ago, Rob, he was starting the season for the Amarillo Sod Poodles. Now, there is a baseball team name for you. Can you help us all, Rob, with
that?
What the hell a sod poodle is? What is that, a species?
A side poodle?
SOD, sod as in grass.
Never heard of that. That he's got me there, and I've never heard that.
But and Corbin Carroll was on his way to being a great player. College days at UCLA. He's just one of those diminutive little guys, as fast as lightning, and he's just a ball player. And man, he the moment was not too big for him, but 2 wild card teams, and of course the last 2 home games. It was like a disadvantage to be the home team for the Phillies last night.
Yeah, home field advantage, it doesn't mean as much as people think it does. And if you come in aggressive and jump on top early, you can take a crowd out real fast.
Yeah, I mean, you'd rather be at home because if you do win, there's a lot of that. But anyway, so and this morning, Butch was talking about, this is true for both Auburn and Alabama. And I won't make this a long discussion. We'll get on to football because it's right in front of us. It has been difficult for both Alabama and Auburn baseball for a long time that we don't have a Hope Scholarship, the lotto that almost every surrounding state, I think every surrounding state does have, Georgia, Mississippi, Louisiana, that helps them bridge the gap between partial scholarships and closer to a full ride for the kids they're after. But Butch did say, hey, it's not a completely level playing field, but NIL funding through Auburn's On to Victory Collective, and I'm sure Alabama's right there doing the same, has really closed the gap. And what fascinated me the most is take a guy who's a big-time pitcher, Rob, Joseph Gonzalez, and I'll write about this next week after my interview with Butch. It was NIL, absolutely, the ability to fund NIL for Gonzalez to have a chance to come back and not let his injured season last year be the story and his legacy at Auburn and Plainsman Park. But this coming season, if he's healthy right now, Butch likes what he's seeing. They're taking the training wheels off of him, getting him ready, but he could have entered the MLB draft, which is no longer 40 rounds, but 20 rounds, which Butch said is helpful. Your fewer kids get drafted and leave you high and dry after they sign. So Gonzalez is coming back to Auburn in no small part because of NIL that helped him, be able to support his parents a little bit, let them come and see him play at more games. So, we can be cynical about NIL, but there's an example in baseball where it's really helping Alabama and Auburn.
No, there's no question. I mean, Joseph Gonzalez last year, we asked Butch Thompson. He's on every week from mid-January to late June. We're really fortunate to have him. I said, at this point in the season, it was late in the season, I said, how many of your top 3 pitchers have even pitched this year, and what's the combined number of innings? And it was like less than 9. And Joseph's a kid out of Puerto Rico who was the ace. And the story that you just gave is another reason why Butch Thompson is so quotable. Don't let the moment be bigger than it actually is. The other one, we don't fail in life because we aim too high and connect. We fail in life because we aim too low and we hit.
Or the great Gretzky. You miss 100% of the shots on goal that you never take.
Correct.
Hey, and Rob, I would not be serving my own selfish brand if I didn't quote you the chat room there. Al in Memphis, I love you, brother. He said Doug needs to be published a magazine on life in the South. He's first class. I'm not first class, Al in Memphis, but thank you for the kind remarks.
No, I mean it's true.
Rob and I could co-publish that, and I think we could at least break even on the cost of operating.
Yeah, I think, but you're right though. Our audience, we look at the demographics. We're 72% male, 28% female, and we've got a lot of people in their teens that listen. You got a lot of people in their 20s and 30s up into their 90s. My dad at 95 listens every day, and you get used to it. But that marriage of outdoor life to sports in the South just gets stronger every year. And you talk about work over here on the 5 acres. MJ, me, Connor, Tanner, whatever, Dave Baker. We're cutting that grass. I get on there for about 4 hours on that John Deere. Our big Mike Campbell gets on one of the tractors. I start off with Charlie Rich's greatest hits. Keep on rolling with the flow, and I just go from there and I hit it all. But yeah, it's a year-round labor of love. I know you spend a ton of time, but it's always great time spent being on that river. Spiritual.
Hey, Rob, speaking of your demographic, man, I'm impressed with the 28% ladies demographic. Bravo, ladies. Tune in here this banal, rowdy college athletics talk. God bless you. That's great that we're getting women into all the sports talk, and it certainly they've made their mark in covering college football, basketball, I presume baseball too. So I love to be, as a father of 3 daughters, I love hearing that.
Well, I mean, one of my new sponsors, Mary, the Nashville Anti-Human Trafficking Coalition in Nashville, absolutely loves college football, loves the sports, and got a son playing high school football. And Cheryl Chambers, one of our listeners, listens every day. She is so into this stuff. She's got so many kids and grandchildren. She's got all their different flags in her front yard. It's looks like the United Nations when you go there. But I think women, no doubt, love sports because they're the ones taking the kids to the games. And Audrey's body language is, she watches Auburn play. She goes, hey, Hugh Freeze will get it done. And everyone I talk to says, y'all give this guy some room to breathe. He'll recruit you out of this.
Yeah, and let's move on into Auburn. And speaking of ladies, that most of the women I know that are really into college football, college basketball, baseball, whatever, and obviously the female sports like gymnastics, softball, volleyball, and all of them that really, and basketball, that have captivated a lot of attention. The thing that most women are way better than us at, Rob, they don't quit on their team mid-season. You post a couple of losses, there's still a lot to play for. And, I don't know why that is. Maybe the testosterone that's coursing through our veins, we can't help but, it seems manly and macho to just get mad and quit. But I'll tell you, that's a seg into my favorite player, and I love a bunch of them on this Auburn team that's obviously in struggles. That the last 4 games that were chalk, the teams that were favored won. In that sense, then I guess you could say Hugh Freeze and his staff are on schedule. They're not overperforming, but they're certainly not wildly underperforming, except, which Hugh himself would admit, we're underperforming in terms of the flow and efficiency on offense and just having some coherent plan. I know they're working on that. I think Hugh, this is the week. Hugh is not dabbling in offensive play calling this week. I've pretty well confirmed, and he's all but admitted it himself, that this is all, I think, going to be dominantly Hugh Freeze calling plays against Mississippi State at 2:30 game this Saturday. And of course, Philip Montgomery will still be very much involved from the press box. But I think that Jalen Simpson, my favorite player by far, not just because of his production, he's practically had an interception in every game, or at least 4 or 5 games. But his attitude under the circumstances, and I'll quote briefly, Rob, but he referred humorously to some cartoon that includes Krabby Patty. He said, "We've got to be like plankton." On that episode, I don't know the show he's talking about, but the
SpongeBob SquarePants.
I guess plankton mentality. The plankton is always getting after it, never quitting every single episode. He's the main villain in SpongeBob, and plankton's focused on one thing. He just wants to get the formula that has made his rival so successful. But in terms of actual football, Simpson goes on to say, don't disengage. I think Hugh Freeze, that was his message to the team this week. It would be tempting to say mail it in now, but we've got to keep going. There's still some excitement. There's still games at home. There's an Iron Bowl at home. There's an opportunity to get Hugh Freeze's SEC win, which won't be a gimme. State's playing really salty defense. They are struggling on offense as well. I mean, they just beat Arkansas, but they had to do it the old 1930s way. 7-3, I think, Rob?
Yes.
So, I love players like Simpson that understand my job is to play every Saturday and practice every week because that's the standard, not just because it always feels good.
Yeah. Yeah. Doug, you had a couple other, points you were talking about Michigan. I want to get your thoughts on that real quick. I mean, we got about 9 minutes. We're good.
Yeah. And I've got a hard stop right at a minute before 10 myself. Before I comment on Michigan, which I'm sure everybody's all over the articles, the latest of note, Pete Thamel and your friend Mark Schleyback, who are talking at length about what's they understand to be video evidence of this Michigan staffer whose name may live in infamy, Connor Stallions, who's interestingly a former U.S. Marine captain. And he, anyway, if you look back there's a lot of folklore that over the years in SEC games, and my intention is not to point fingers at any one program in particular. It wouldn't surprise me at all if our own beloved Auburn Tigers, given the opportunity, if they think they've seen something on game film, a signal, I think that's probably fair game. But taking it to video evidence, or if you ever were to confirm when there have been suspicions by fans, probably more urban legend than confirmed fact, that certain games in the first half have looked so bad that a defense is in your headset. They know what play is going to be run. And it looked like a good play call, and all their players are deployed perfectly, that it just begs the question, have they decoded our signals? The problem Michigan's going to have is Harbaugh has recently gotten himself a reputation for riding the dark horse, not the white horse, in terms of the ethics of the game. And there's a reason he was suspended a few games early season. So now this is what's breaking, Rob. This Connor Stallions, a staffer at Michigan, purchased game tickets in his own name for more than 30 games. This is games of opponents, Big Ten schools, over the past 3 years. And the tickets were purchased on the sidelines across from each bench. For example, Ohio State, Penn State game, he purchased them where he could see directly the Ohio State bench, the play caller, and the same on Penn State. He had the ability to be on either sideline during the game. And so if there is video evidence of how he's surveilling that and how he might be potentially decoding things, that would, I'll throw a NCAA regulations code at you. That would run afoul of, bear with me here, NCAA rule in question, Article 11, subsection 2 of the rule book, which says any attempt to record, either through audio or video means, any signals given by an opposing player, coach, or other team personnel is prohibited. So it would appear there is a likelihood they may be able to prove that this staffer has some sort of recording device. whether that's still shots or video. And, I think that's a line that for the integrity of the game that none of us should want to cross.
No, and I got to ask you this question. I sound like an attorney, but is this a spirit of the game rule or a clear, written violation? Because I always go back to that Andy Griffith episode when Barney was trying to arrest people for jaywalking. He goes, Barney, you got to remember the number one rule in law enforcement is you're dealing with people, and you got to remember that. So I think I like the spirit of the game.
Yeah, well, I think
like steroids. I don't like that.
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I'm not so Pollyanna that I want to tell. For example, to me, it's completely good coaching and good game planning and scouting, and kind of part of the fun of it for coaches to time after time after time watch close-up, zoomed film, legal films, film provided by the SEC office for scouting purposes, and the coaches can pull it off of network broadcast too. But where, for example, you watch how an offensive lineman leans back in his stance a little. That's a tell. That's a coaching tell, and it's on that offensive line coach to get his guys to not have any dead giveaways like that if it's a run or pass. But it's a whole, I think fans at large and the NCAA in service of fans, we hope, of the member institutions would agree that we don't want certain extremes. Like, some Auburn fans maybe were paranoid, and I would say guilty as charged, believe that first half 2010 Iron Bowl, whether through just good scouting or some more nefarious means, it sure looked like Kirby Smart knew Auburn's offensive playbook. And, of course, to that I would also say, that would only take knowing about 5 or 6 plays that Gus was running, because Cam Newton and that backfield and those receivers, you don't need to have a thick playbook. So, and all they were doing was blowing up the handoff, the mesh handoff with Hightower and others. So I'm sort of, I think that's a little extreme and paranoia, but we don't want sophisticated people who may have military backgrounds who know how to decode hand signals, getting their hands on game signal film, and basically being able to deploy their defense to know exactly what play has been called. That somehow is hard to regulate and enforce, but I think we can't have that, and we sure as hell can't have a school figuring out ways to create motivation, shall we say, for a college referee to influence making a game more competitive by calling or not calling plays. And that, to me, is what a lot of fans, most recently, Heupel at Tennessee was not happy about some of the calls last week.
Oh, no. Look, great stuff. And Maury, remember how Auburn beat Georgia in 1942? An assistant coach, Ralph Jordan, watched Georgia on film and noticed some things, and Auburn beat that number 1 ranked team in Columbus at Memorial Stadium that went to the Rose Bowl. And it's just an interesting story. But you're right. I think the spirit of the game, you're thinking, hey, we don't need double agents and espionage going on.
Well, yeah, and there was a NBA ref that's well documented who got caught up with the mafia or some organized crime and fixing NBA games, and he did jail time. So the notion that that's impossible to occur even in college ranks is absurd. I don't think it's widespread or have anything that criminal occurs. But point spread, point shaving, all those things that really taint the fans' appreciation that it's a level competition, those have to be eradicated.
Yeah. Doug, if you want one of these SEC sets, Barnwood Brenda down in Batesville can make you one. So let me know. It would look cool in the Dry Creek Lodge on the Cahaba River.
Yeah.
See, hey, look, I know you got to get going, Doug. Great stuff as always. I'll be talking to you later today on that thing tonight. Awesome stuff. Thank you so much. And when do you got some interviews you said coming out?
Yeah, more to come on that. But I'm working with the great folks at On to Victory Collective and just promoting Auburn fan awareness of that, the value of that NIL collective. If you want to be competitive, and you want to assist these athletes and, their college experience being less financially stressful. And so I've had interviews with Bruce Pearl yesterday, Butch this morning, and I told him, please don't bother Hugh Freeze until December. There's plenty of time to interview him. I know he's got his hands full. So, Rob, always good to hang out with you, and I love the Sideline Show. You've got an amazing cast of people that come on, and it would be cool if there were a way to have a big party with all the people who regularly tune in and listen, but we appreciate all of them that tune in on a regular basis.
Hey, we do too, man. Most often we see the face of Christ in the least among us. Great show. We'll be back tomorrow. Until then, go out and make a positive difference in everybody you encounter. We'll see you tomorrow. We are out of here.
See you, Rob.